no matter how much you've changed your mind and you now decide to pursue Shen Chao romantically, I don't have amnesia. I remember everything that you did, you motherfucker, and
I enjoy cussing. I really do. It's one of the most refreshing, cleansing things that you could do.
Hello and welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Quick disclaimer, I think my voice sounds much better right now, but if it sounds a little bit off, maybe a bit husky or raspy, that is because I am recovering from an illness. But I really wanted to film this video today because I have so many thoughts swirling around in my head and I feel the need to get them out like right now. So in today's Danmei Diaries video, I will be going over physical releases that I picked up or didn't pick up. The ones that I was able to read, I'll do a quick review of them, and I'll finally wrap up the video by going over some other Danmei novels that I am reading online as well. But before I get into all of that, let me start by saying Danmei is most definitely my favorite genre to read right now. I just think there's so much of it to discover if anyone decides to venture outside of the wuxia or qianxia subgenre. And I'm talking about those two specifically because I think that's probably what introduced more recent fans to the Danmei genre from the MXCX series. But if you decide to venture outside of that, the genre has so much to offer, honestly. Like, there are so many subgenres similar to Western novels, and they're all extremely well written. Okay, maybe saying they're all extremely well written might be taking it a little bit too far, but for the most part, they are very, very well written. I have been having a good time just discovering so many of them and venturing into different subgenres. It's like discovering a whole new world, and it has been so fun. All of that to say, I can totally foresee my most read genre this year being Danmei again, and I don't have a problem with that because they are so enjoyable for me. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. Since the last Danmei Diaries video that I did, there have been exactly 5 releases from 7 Seas. All the releases I picked up were from 7 Seas. The other 2 publishers that I was considering picking up releases from were Monogatari Novels and Rosemei. Monogatari Novels I decided against because I found out that their releases were machine translated, so that was a no for me. Rosemei, I did not pick up anything from them because I think they're a fairly new publisher, and the 2 pre-orders that I can remember seeing from them so far this year, they were group orders. The pre-orders, I mean. I think they're still going to open them up when the physical releases come out for other people to pick up. The only reason I would have wanted to pick the pre-orders up were because they came with some bonus items I was really interested in, but I'm still a little bit iffy about them. I want to see how the pre-orders turn out before I start deciding to partake in them in the future. So I am holding on to see how the pre-orders that they've had so far, I want to see how they turn out before I decide to start picking up anything from them. So those were all the publishers I was planning to pick things up from, but 7 Seas are mostly the ones that I've stuck with. This are the 4 books I'll be talking about today. I know I mentioned I picked up 5 releases. The 5th one was the first book in Case File Compendium. Because it was the first book in a series, I did an isolated review for that one. And if you're interested in it, I'm going to link it up in the corner of this video. I'm not sure what site that's going to appear on, but it's going to be in the corner of the video if that's something you are interested in. So in the order they were released, I have the 2nd book of Stars of Chaos, the 3rd book of Remnants of Filth, 4th book of Thousand Autumns, and finally the 2nd book of Guardian. I actually finished reading this last night and I started going haywire, thinking about everything I wanted to say in this video. Here's to hoping I actually remember everything I want to say. But for these last 2, Guardian and Thousand Autumns, the next book in both series will be the final ones in them. So the 5th book of Thousand Autumns will be the final book in the series, and the 3rd book of Guardian will be the last book in the series as well. And I noticed that for both final books, 7 Seas has the option for a special edition similar to what they had with the MXCX series that come with like bookmarks, postcards, sticker books, and all of that stuff. I really like that they gave that option for both series. The Thousand Autumns one is already open for pre-order, and they actually dropped the final cover yesterday. I'm so excited for the special edition of Thousand Autumns, especially because the art for Thousand Autumns has been my favorite so far of all the Danmei releases that Seven Seas picked up. So I'm really excited for that one. Guardian, the pre-order link for this one isn't open for the third book just yet. Whenever it does get open, I'll go ahead and pre-order that because I just love the fact that this is a short series. I wasn't aware that it was going to be that short, but yeah, those are all the books that I picked up. I will go ahead and start talking through all of them after a quick break. I need to grab some water. Okay, I'll now go over the books I was able to read in the order that I read them, which also happens to be the order they were released in. There will be some spoilers in this video, but any portion of the book that I think is a spoiler, I'm going to put a tag on the screen if you do decide to watch it, if you haven't read these books that I'm going to be talking about, so you can mute that portion of the video when I get there. I will be starting with the second volume of Stars of Chaos. This book surprised me. I was pleasantly surprised by it because the first book in the series was honestly not my favorite. This was my least favorite first book in a series that I read last year, and some of the issues that I had with it, I thought the pacing of the book was really slow. I was not invested in the plot or the characters. There was really only one character that stood out to me, and the steampunk element of the series, although I found it to be creative and well written, I struggled with visualizing it, and that made the book a little bit hard to consume. But all of those things and more were addressed in the second book. I almost want to take credit for the fact that they were all addressed in the second book after I complained about them. But given the fact that this was a series that was written long before I read it, that's just probably the way the author intended to write the series. And it makes sense in hindsight. That was just the first book. There were a lot of things that needed to be laid out for the rest of the series. But the only character that stood out in the first volume was Guyun, because he has this very willful and playful personality, while at the same time being the general of this super elite battalion of the army. And you can also add in the fact that he has this illness that was skirted around a lot in the first book. The combination of all of those things make him quite an interesting character and give him a little bit of a mysterious air. Those are things that make characters interesting. On the flip side, the main character of the series, Chonggong, felt a little bland to me. And in hindsight, I realized that I was treating him a little bit unfairly based on how I think a main character should look. But if we think about his situation in the first book, he was a 15-year-old boy who suddenly had his world turned upside down. In a matter of minutes, the people he knew as his parents turned out not to be, and the only other people that he could turn to, his godfathers, weren't who they said they were either. So he had a lot going on with him, and he had a lot to adjust to in the first book. But I also realized that because I was so focused on how much I wasn't enjoying the first book, there were little hints that alluded to him developing as a character that I missed. And even if he was bland as a character development exists for a reason, and he got phenomenal character development in the second book. I was incredibly charmed by him in the second book, just with the way he has developed as a character. And by the end of the book, I was in love with him. Honestly, almost as much as I love Guyun as a character. I love the both of them so much, and I'm so excited to see the way their relationship develops. But the one hint that I am now able to see in hindsight after reading the second book was the fact that Chonggong had this very nice, easy, cushy life set before him that he could take with decent achievement while making money and being the prince that he is, and he decided not to do that. His godfather, Guyun, offered him the option of going to be stationed at the border he was serving at the end of the first volume. Now, granted, Guyun was also offering him that option because Chonggong decided to start traveling with this monk in the first book, and that puts the both of them at loggerheads with each other. But he could have decided to take that option and just have an easy life and also be closer to his godfather, but he decided not to do that. And he had things that he wanted to do. He took actions towards them, and you can see all of them just starting to fall into place in the second book, and it was beautiful to read. It was honestly very beautiful to read. The second thing that stood out to him in this second book that makes me so excited to read him more and more as a character is just the way he presents himself as a person. Case in point, there was a portion in the book where Guyun found out how Chonggong feels about him, and he started going into this spiel as his godfather, talking about how, like, oh, you've probably just gotten attached to me because I'm the only family that you have, and all of that. And Chonggong listened to everything Guyun had to say, and after he was done, he was like, I understand where you're coming from, but this is how I feel. I don't want to spoil it by saying more than that, but he basically told him, like, respectfully, I understand you, but also respectfully, no, that is not how I feel. I know my feelings. I love you more than in a familial way. I love you romantically, and I just love that because that dynamic means that Chonggong respects Guyun as a person, but at the same time, he's not a pushover. He is not going to let himself get easily swayed by someone just because he really respects them or because he sees them as a godfather figure, although that has been totally blown away in this second book. But he respects him, and at the same time, he's willing to stand firm in who he is as a person and just let Guyun know, like, I respect you, but I am my own person, and I am going to tell you how I really feel. I really love that dynamic between the both of them because given how willful Guyun is as a person, it is so easy to be more submissive in a relationship if you are his partner. And the fact that Chonggong's character has been developed like that makes for such an interesting dynamic, and I am so excited to see how the relationship develops more in the future for that reason. But I love the way his character has been written in this second volume. There were a lot of things that happened towards the end of the second volume, and my head was just going woozy, like, what? I don't understand the thing that just happened in like the last 50 pages, but I still really enjoyed it. I will give this book 4.5 stars, which is a huge step up from like the 3 stars that I gave the first book. So yes, that was Stars of Chaos. Definitely surprised me a lot, but I'm not mad at it. I loved it. I talked a lot for that, but I'm going to move on to the next one now. The next book is the 3rd volume of Remnants of Filth. And this is where my smile gets turned upside down because big sigh. I've talked about Remnants of Filth and Harha a lot on my channel. I always stood firmly on the fact that Remnants of Filth was not as angsty as Harha because I've read all of Harha. And this book changed my mind. Honestly, I was crying a whole lot. I wrote a very short review of it on Goodreads. I'm going to start with that and just elaborate further on what I wrote on Goodreads. I'll put a picture of it on the screen as well. Okay, this was my review. I don't even know where to begin with describing how much this book broke me. Until this volume, I was firmly holding on to my opinion that this is not quite as angsty as Arha. Like I said, this volume changed my eyes. This volume changed my mind. My eyes were leaking within the first 5 pages. From the story of how Mocha's father died to his emotional breakdown after the arc in the time mirror, I was gutted and my heart hurt so much for the both of them. Mocha's emotions were completely flayed open in this volume. Much of the series has showed him angry, stoic, desperately seeking closure while struggling to let go of the Gumong he once knew, loved, and respected. Now he just seems like a child who repeatedly lost the people he loved to war and greed. And as much as I loved the pure Gumong the story portrayed before he regained his memories, seeing him as he used to be has been interesting as well. The way he stood strong in the face of all the vitriol slung his way and only broke down after the battle at Phoenix Scribe Mountain when his pleas to bury his comrades were met with cruel disregard. There's likely more to his defection than has been reviewed, but after reading the way he was treated, I understand his choice. There is still so much we don't know about Gumong, because while we got the story of how he was treated, that only shows what was done to him, and a lot of his thoughts still remain unknown. What are his true feelings? What has he really been feeling this entire time? I'm curious and worried for myself at the same time, as I've developed a Pavlovian response to this story. It always ends in tears, but I'm here for the ride. I enjoyed reading this, but it made me tear up like a whole lot. This book triggered a very emotional month for me in March. Everything made me cry. Happy things, emotional things, sad things, angsty things, everything just made me cry. And this was what started it. This book was what started it. I love the fact that Mochu got to go into the time mirror with Gumong, because I started thinking like, okay, if Gumong is the only one that goes into the time mirror and is able to recover his memories, there's also a chance that he's not going to say the part of his memories that he was able to regain, and that's just going to make the story drag on for much longer than it needs to. So I was happy that he went in for that reason, and he was able to see some things in a new light with how much he has now been able to experience after the fact. So he basically saw things in a new light because he now has knowledge of what has happened so far and everything that took place afterwards as well. And to my point of Gumong not sharing what he discovered in the time mirror, I was completely right, because when he came out, he claims that the only portion of his memory that he regained was the point up till his defection, and everything in between that and him being returned to, I think it's Chonghua, that's the name of the kingdom, he does not remember anything. So everything that happened when he defected to the Liao kingdom, he basically does not remember all of that. But this was the same man that was saying very specific things about the Liao kingdom that suggest otherwise, and people are just asking him like, oh, I thought you said you didn't remember that. Why do you know so much about the Liao kingdom? I'm just looking at him like, this dumb idiot. If you're going to lie, do it well. This is how you know that he's not that kind of person. He never had a reason to lie in the first place. He was such a great source of light, just very playful, very kind, optimistic person, regardless of how people treated him and his status as a slave. He was still such a great character, which was why Mochu loved and respected him and looked up to him so much. And see everything that transpired, I feel like that's not the full story, even though we got some aspects of everything that took place after the battle at the Phoenix Crime Mountain and everything that went down before his defection. I feel like there's still more to the story, but we did get some parts of it, and honestly, that was such a hard part of the book to read. More than seeing what happened to Gumong, just seeing the way Moche struggled to take it all in. Oh my god. I felt so bad for him, because in the last two books, yes, you've seen him just being desperately trying to find closure because of how betrayed he felt by Gumong's defection, but he still gave off this very stoic air about him, and I honestly pitied Gumong more in the first two books. In this book, I don't know who I feel worse for of the two of them. Their story is just so sad, and the way Mocho broke down at the end of the book, honestly, for like the last 100 pages of the book, I had a fucking headache because my eyes wouldn't stop leaking. I was crying for the last 100 pages, and I just kept reading like, okay, I'm gonna keep crying, but I'm gonna keep reading. Oh my god, this is so sad, but yes, let me keep reading. That's literally how I felt when I was reading the end of the book. It was terrible. It was well written. I enjoyed reading it, but at the same time, it made me so sad for the both of them. So this is another 5 stars from Meat Bun. This fucking like, I don't know how she does this all the time, but yeah, that was 5 stars. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's going to change the entire mood of the video, and I don't want that to happen, but that was Remnants of Filth. The next book, unfortunately, this is another one that's going to change my mood. The 4th book of Thousand Autumns. This is honestly one of my favorite ongoing series that I'm reading, but this book was my least favorite of everything that has been released in the series so far. Not because this wasn't well written, it has been just as well written as the other 3 books. But the reason why I did not like this book, yes, it didn't have as much action as all the other books in the series, but also because the Danmei portion of the series starts to get developed in this book, and I am not a fan. I've said that before on this channel, but I'm not a fan of it. I kind of wish they would have just left Shen Chao as a celibate Taoist, but that probably wouldn't make this series a Danmei. I honestly don't know. I feel like I erased the part of the book that started alluding to a more romantic vibe between the two of them. I just erased it from my memory because I wasn't here for it. I don't like it. I really don't like it. I like Yanushi as a character. I love Shen Chao as a character. I just love him as a person so much. I feel like he represents this idea of someone who is just good. Even though a lot of Danmei in general, they try to make you realize that good and evil can be quite hard concepts to stick to, and morality as being gray is something that everyone has to be comfortable with. Shen Chao's character is just firmly a good, pure, kind person, and he has gotten a character development in his own way as well. There are so many things I think he was very naive about that he has just grown out of. In fact, there was a quote that he said in this book that I absolutely loved and I highlighted. I just remembered while I was doing this, and I wrote it in my review of the series as well. So what did he say? I'm trying to pull it up and I'm trying to yap while I do that. Yes, he said this to someone. I can't even remember who he said it to. He said, though my cultivation doesn't revel in reckless slaughter, that doesn't mean I can't kill. That's not something he would have said in the first book. And I just love this for him. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of the romantic aspect of this series because Yanushi does not deserve him. There was a part in the book, okay, if we remember, now this is a spoiler and I will put a tag on the screen. In the second book, Yanushi exchanged Shen Chao for his sword from, I believe it was San Jinxing, and that was one of the cruelest things that he did in the series. But in this 4th book, he starts talking about like, oh, he's a very proud person, and once he lost his sword, he had basically given up on that sword and he didn't really care about it. So when he exchanged Shen Chao for that sword, he honestly didn't give a shit about the sword. He just wanted to humiliate Shen Chao. And he said that. He said that, and he was like, he's not going to let Shen Chao know that because he knows that he's not going to take it well. I'm like, really? So you know that you're a shitty person, but you're still going to take advantage of this person's kindness. How is that even right? And why are you letting readers see that? Like, no matter how much you've changed your mind and you now decide to pursue Shen Chao romantically, I don't have amnesia. I remember everything that you did, you motherfucker, and I am not on board with the both of you getting together. Even though what I feel is basically not going to affect how the series is going to end, I don't give a shit. I am rewriting that part of the story in my head. I refuse to accept it. And that is what I have decided to do. So yeah, that is 1,000 Autumns. And okay, I keep remembering things to say the minute I want to wrap up the review about 1,000 Autumns. I feel like the only reason Yan Wuxi is interested, quote unquote, in Shen Chao, I don't really see it as romantic interest. It's almost because he has found this person that could finally prove him wrong, that human nature is just innately terrible. And he's more drawn to him because he sees him as this outlier and less because he actually likes Shen Chao romantically. So it's almost like a trophy, like a toy that he still sees Shen Chao as a toy, basically. I hate that idea. And another thing is, I don't believe Yan Wuxi's romantic feelings for Shen Chao, but I'm struggling even more to think that Shen Chao will all of a sudden be romantically interested in Yan Wuxi. By the last book, there is only one book left in this series, and nothing in this book suggests that Shen Chao sees him the same way. So how is all of that going to happen in the last book? You're not making this believable. It almost feels like the romantic part of the story was thrown in just to bait Danmei lovers in. I don't like that. I'm honestly not a fan of it. As much as I love the series, I feel like it would have done great without the Danmei aspect of it. So yes, I feel like that made no sense at all. Everything that rant that I just went into were about 1,000 items. I love the series. This was like a 4-star for me. It would have definitely been a 5 without the romantic part of the series, but I love the series. I just have a love-hate relationship. No, it is firmly a hate relationship with the romantic part of the series. So yes, that was 1,000 items. The last book here is Guardian, the second book of Guardian. I just finished reading this last night, so I haven't really had time to have the experience settled. So I took some notes on everything I would like to talk about. This was my favorite first book in a series that I read last year. I'm still really enjoying it, but because this is such a short series, when I found out that the third book was going to be the last book, I was a little bit worried about how the pacing was going to go, but the pacing is still great in the second book. And thinking about it now, in the first book, a lot of things were set up in just the first book, like the connection between the two main characters, so Zhao Yunlan and Shen Wei, and just the fact that they knew each other millennium ago. And the introduction of the 4 hallowed artifacts, you could already tell that they were going to play a huge role in the entire plot of the series. So the fact that those 2 details were provided to readers in the first book, it makes sense that this is going to be a short series. But I'm really enjoying that. Another thing that felt really fast in this second book was how quickly Shen Wei and Zhao Yunlan adapted to their romantic relationship. So they're already dating in this second book, which is why I was worried, like, things are going a little bit too fast, but they had this very intense attraction to each other in just the first book. And the fact that they've known each other for so long, although Zhao Yunlan can remember all of it, Shen Wei definitely does, it makes sense that they will almost connect with each other, almost like they're just picking up from where they left off. So yeah, the only part about this book that I struggled with was towards the end. They just dropped a bunch of lore on you in like 30 pages. I really hate it when books do that. Not just Danmei, even Western novels, when you're reading fantasy, they'll just drop a bunch of lore on you and they're just like, okay, check that, understand that, and make sure that you remember all of it for the rest of the book that's going to happen, and also try to apply it to what has happened so far. And I'm just like, what? And it's even more annoying when they're very fictional and made up things. So there's like 72 titles, places, and things that you're trying to remember in this entire lore. They do the same thing with anime power systems. And I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. Like, does this even make sense to you? Am I meant to remember all of this? The part about like the history of Pangu and everything at the end of the book, I was just like, huh? I had to go look it up online to figure out what the hell was going on, because I honestly did not understand it. I still don't understand it, so I'm probably going to keep reading. That annoyed me so much. That's the only thing about this book that has annoyed me so far, but overall, I'm still really enjoying it. And okay, the last thing I wanted to say about it was, yes, this is a serious book, but it still provides you with some comic relief because of Zhao Yunlan's personality. But the other comic relief that I got from this book were from my 2 favorite secondary characters, and that will be Guo Chongchong and Song Zhan. I just adore them so much. Seeing Guo Chongchong just struggle to fit in at the Special Investigations Department, and Song Zhan, who was the leader of the rebellion in the first book that was related to Wang Zhang, the ghost that works in HR, he's now an employee in the Special Investigations Department. So every part of the story that those 2 characters showed up in, it just made me smile. It warmed up my heart. I just loved both of them so much. I know that is really random, but they're just 2 characters that I really appreciated amidst all the serious things that were going on in this second book. So yeah, that is Guardian. I don't feel like I did my experience of reading it justice, but that is what I have to say about it now. I'm probably going to wake up like a week later and think like, dang, I could have said so much more. But those are all the 4 books that I've read since my last Danmei Diaries video. Everything else that I'm reading is online. So in February through March, I read this Danmei novel online titled Wait For Me After School because Danmei Twitter was going crazy about it. The funny thing is, I'm not even on Twitter, but it made it to me all the way on Instagram and TikTok, so I decided to read it. It took me over a month to read that series, and it's not even very long. It has less than 100 chapters with the side stories or extra stories, whatever you want to call it. But the first half of the series was so slow, overly repetitive, and I just felt like it could have been way more condensed before you got to the better part of the series. And I was bored out of my mind reading the first half of the story. The only thing that made me get through it and get to the more enjoyable parts of the series was because of how much hype it was getting online. I feel like it's kind of worth it to just kind of push through the first half, but at the same time, if that wasn't a series that was very highly recommended by other people and I just discovered by myself, I wouldn't have made it through the end of the story, made it through till the end of the story, because the first half was honestly so hard to get through, but the second half was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. It was quite emotional. I know I mentioned that Remnants of Filth triggered a very emotional month of reading for me in March, so I cried a lot for the end of Wait For Me After School as well. There were quite some angsty, emotional, sad parts in the story, and it started out as like a high school series, coming of age series, kind of like first love between a delinquent type character and an honor student. Yes, a delinquent type character and an honor student. Let's just go with that. So basically the first person in the class and like the last person in the class. It was a very cute story, but another part that I really liked about the story was it went a bit farther than them being in high school and delved into their lives after the fact. They graduated from high school, they became adults, and I just really appreciated that. So I'll give the series like 3.5 stars because I struggled to read the first part of it. I mean, if I'm going to struggle to read it and the only thing that made me get to the better parts of the story was because it came highly recommended, then you did terrible with your pacing. I'm sorry. So yeah, that was Wait For Me After School. Because I have read so many things that made me cry and sad in March, I decided to read something a little bit more lighthearted this month, and I am currently reading The Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know. So I'm going to say this is a little bit like Scum Villain without the transmigration part of the series. But if you watch Korean dramas, the most exact comparison that I can make will be to the Korean drama W2 Worlds, where the main character of the series basically finds out that he's the main character of a web novel that the other main character read. So similar story in The Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know. So this Devil Venerable gets a book one day and he finds out that he's basically the second male lead in this novel titled Abusive Romance, You Are the Unchanging One in My Heart, with this very stupid female lead that is foolishly devoted to the male lead despite all his indiscretions. And this Devil Venerable is also the second male lead that is so in love with the second female lead that he dies for her, even though she hardly pays him any attention because she's too stupidly focused on the male lead. So the Devil Venerable gets this book and is like, is there something wrong with this girl's head? Why does she love this man after all the shit that he put her through? And even more so, I'm worried about the fact that I love her, even though she is such a stupid character. So that is why the title of the web novel is The Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know. After he got the book, the first line of the book basically said, due to an overabundance of plot holes, this story has been rejected by its readers. Thus, the most popular character, who is the Devil Venerable among the readers, has been selected to personally verify the story's consistency and make suitable changes. So the Devil Venerable, I keep saying that, but he decides to start interviewing all the characters in the series and see how it can change it, and also just understand why the story turned out that way. I'm honestly really enjoying it. It's fun, it's funny to read, very comical, and it's cute. It's a pretty short series too. I think it has like maybe 80 or 90 chapters with only 2 side stories. I'm reading it on novel updates, but that's everything that I'm reading. I also picked some series out of my Danmei TBR that I'm going to try to read this year, because I know I'm going to get through this one pretty fast. So the next ones that I have on my list to try to read this year, I have Nan-chan, Married Thrice to Salted Fish, I Accidentally Married a Man Full of Vinegar, Glory, Mistakenly Saving the Villain, First Class Lawyer, and Hope You've Been Well. I won't really call myself a mood reader. I'll just randomly pick one of those and make myself in the mood to read them. But if there is anybody watching this video who has read any one of those titles and you will highly recommend them, feel free to drop something about it in the comments and I will pick that as my next read. But I have yapped enough and I can actually feel my voice starting to get better as I talk some more. But that is the end of the video. That is everything that I've been reading, what I've been up to, and what I plan to keep reading for Danmei this year. Whatever day you find yourself watching this, make it a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.